I think it's safe to assume that everyone here today watching this video believes that Jeffrey Epstein has taken lives, but there is yet to be any proof of this happening. So as of right now, we're all just assuming that this has happened. Today, we're going to be looking at who gave Epstein the permission to kill. And this should be able to help us determine if he actually did take lives or if this is just something that we're making up in our heads. We may already know the answer to that, but we're all looking for some proof. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. I'm sitting here with my morning coffee and I'm ready to dive on in. Let me know what you're drinking. Now let's go.
Mary Kennedy found dead in her backyard. Whoops. That's a reply Jeffrey Epstein left after being informed RFK Jr.'s wife, Mary Richardson Kennedy, had died. And people believe Jeffrey's whoops insinuates that he may have something to do with her death. On top of that, this wasn't an isolated message. What we found in the over 400 times whoops appeared in the Epstein files was hard to ignore, with the word appearing in emails discussing evidence being destroyed, alleged crimes, and multiple deaths. The repetition, alongside the dark conversations, made it clear that whoops was being used with sinister intent. By now, you've likely heard about the allegations of coded language being used in the Epstein files.
Of course.
Epstein and his network used code words all the time.
People going crazy think they found a code word for human meat? Wait, what?
They talk repeatedly about pizza and grape soda.
But as online sleuths connected messages to Pizzagate code words, one word was overlooked until recently.
I have been stuck on this whoop situation.
Yes, not cream cheese, not grape soda, whoops. It's a word that not only implies an accident, but some responsibility.
All right, so this is the word that we haven't really dove into yet. We've known about all of the pizza, we've known about grape soda, we've known about cream cheese and all the what that is supposed to mean, but whoops is a new one, at least for many of us here on the channel. And when you think about it, if someone tells you that someone has died, the response, whoops, it seems very careless, like you don't care at all about that person's death, or maybe even that you were involved in that death.
Knocking over a glass of milk, for example, is whoops-worthy. Death, sickness, and tragedy, not so much.
Agreed.
Yet, as our team combed through the Epstein files, we quickly realized that Jeffrey's use of the word, and potentially his intended meaning, was entirely different from our own. Let's start by analyzing the disturbing context this word was used in, from warnings, to threats, to something even more sinister. As our team dug, we got the feeling that whoops didn't always mean the same thing. For example, sometimes it seemed to express regret, like Jeffrey calling someone the wrong name during intimacy. Other times, it almost seemed to act as an alarm when discussing potentially illegal matters, like in this conversation between Jeffrey Epstein and the former European Commissioner for Trade, Peter Mandelson, from March 2010. Peter, I'm sure blank would love to see number 10. Jeffrey wrote, to which Peter replied, I have had V bad setback with R, who has somehow gotten into my texts. Whoops, Jeffrey responded, before adding, what shall I do? You may need help. How does he see them? But Peter's reply cut the conversation short. This email is probably compromised as well. Let's talk. From the use of the initial R to the mystery surrounding what number 10 referred to, it was clear that this conversation wasn't just written in some type of code, but that these men knew they were being watched.
That's the first time that I've seen someone mention and think that the emails may be compromised. And obviously, that's the first person that was actually correct, because now all of these emails are out there and here for everyone to see. Interesting.
And if that was the case, maybe whoops was the signal that they were no longer alone. But whoops wasn't just a potential warning. It could also be viewed as a threat. For example, in one email from 2013, Jeffrey seemingly referenced a New York Times article to Trayvon Martin, a black teenager whose life was taken by a member of his local neighborhood watch.
Right.
Jeffrey wrote, saw today's New York Times article. Whoops. Careful, we don't want Trayvon Meervold. The last name Jeffrey replaced Martin with in this message belonged to Nathan Meervold, the former CTO of Microsoft.
Is he trying to say that he doesn't want this guy to lose his life? Is he implying that he's got targets on people's heads?
Was listed in Jeffrey's flight logs and in his black book under 12 different numbers. In fact, the message was likely sent to Nathan Meervold, as the recipient is labeled as Nathan M. So, was this Jeffrey's way of warning Nathan he could go whoops the same way Trayvon had?
I wonder if that was like a threat to him. to do whatever it was that they had going on in a conversation. You don't want him to be the next one to go.
Adding to the mystery, whoops was often slipped into messages where it seemingly had no business being. For example, Wall Street attorney Brad Karp, who the files revealed plotted with Jeffrey to have a woman who had become an inconvenience to someone in their circle deported, received an email from Jeffrey in 2016 regarding an extortion attempt. "What else is there that she is threatening to expose?" Jeffrey asked. "Can I see the documents, transcripts, or tapes?" Whoops. Was whoops Jeffrey's way of discreetly offering to get rid of this blackmailer permanently? Wow. The more we looked into the files, the darker the implications of this word became. It appeared in an email with the subject line, "He deserves it," in Jeffrey's response to someone getting sick, even in a message to former White House counsel, Catherine Rumler, about Hillary Clinton's hacked emails. You know, the ones that would start the Pizzagate conspiracy. Due to the different, yet equally suspicious context of these emails, some saw whoops as a catch-all term he uses for bad news, while others saw it as code for "it's done" or "task completed." This brings us to the most popular association with the word, death. See, of the over 400 uses of whoops in the files, even AI chatbot Grok had to admit that the word often followed violent or fatal events.
Right.
And in the face of tragedy, especially someone's passing.
I think already, only a third of the way through this, we can understand that whoops means something bad is going to happen, or whoops means that Jeffrey Epstein and his network are going to do something to make something bad happen. There's not a good connotation behind the word whoops in these files.
Jeffrey's go-to response didn't just come across as insensitive, but incriminating.
After going through these files for weeks now, it's clear to me that that word means to unalive someone. Whether they're joking or not, I have no idea.
Just take a look at this email from 2015, where Jeffrey responded to the death of Deutsche Bank managing director Steven Elkman with one word, whoops. And unfortunately, when it comes to the connection between death and the word whoops, this only scratches the surface. So, if you're ready for something deeper, darker, and a whole lot more twisted, venture back with us 14 years, to May 16th, 2012, when this email landed in Jeffrey's inbox. Mary Kennedy found dead in her backyard. The message was from Eva Dubin, a physicist and the former Miss Sweden, who briefly dated Jeffrey before marrying billionaire Glenn Dubin. You can find her name in Jeffrey's black book with different numbers.
We actually just had a video with her about 2 days ago on the channel.
The flight logs for his private jet, and say, 6,326 times in the Epstein files.
Wow.
Yes, these two were close. So, who better to break the news about the untimely passing of RFK Jr.'s estranged wife, Mary Richardson Kennedy? Then again, according to RFK Jr., he hardly knew Jeffrey. Their friendship amounted to 2 innocent plane rides.
I was with 2 children and my wife out on the plane at that time. I knew nothing about Jeffrey Epstein.
Unless this slip of the tongue alluded to more.
I ran across Jeffrey Epstein at parties, at fundraisers.
But acquaintance or friend, Jeffrey's response to the tragedy felt inappropriate.
He said at parties. Now, the fundraisers are parties, but he probably didn't want it to come across as if he was going to these evil parties that were going on. Fundraisers is probably the safer word for him to state right there.
The financier replied with one word, whoops.
Super strange way to respond when you hear that the wife of one of the men you're associated with suddenly loses her life.
It was a response that felt so cold that people had to ask, did he do something to her?
Yep.
Yes. The internet believed that, in this context, whoops stood for something much darker. One ex-user theorized, whoops equals I ordered someone's death. Another user pointed out, that sounds like an admission of guilt. They are tee-hee-heeing a likely hit job. But who would want Mary Kennedy dead? Well, there was someone who stood the benefit from her passing, her husband. See, our team did a little digging into the marriage of RFK Jr. and Mary Kennedy, and what we uncovered was years of resentment, pain, and potentially a motive. According to RFK Jr., Mary's struggles with sobriety and depression led to the deterioration of their marriage, which ended in 2010, while he filed for divorce and the couple separated. Cue a power struggle over finances, a messy custody battle, and one unsettling discovery. See, as their relationship unraveled, Mary found a little red journal documenting her husband's infidelity over the years with 37 different women. Despite the terrible things happening in the world, my life is great, RFK Jr. wrote on November 5th, 2001. according to a copy of the 398-page journal that was secured by the Post. So I've been looking for ways to screw it up. I'm like Adam and live in Eden, and I can have everything but the fruit is all I want. In the journal, he later describes this defect as his lust demons. Then, on May 16, 2012, tragedy struck the Kennedy family once again.
We've learned the estranged wife of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has died.
It would later be confirmed that Mary took her own life.
We've seen a lot of unaliving by one's own hand on this channel. And it really leads us to believe that people aren't actually doing this to themselves, and Epstein included in this, that higher powers that be, and I'm not talking about spiritual powers, I'm talking about powerful people, are involved in this unaliving of others. Very strange.
All we really know is that reportedly Mary was depressed and worried about her financial situation.
The official cause of death was asphyxiation due to hanging. Her husband was the one who discovered her in the garage.
I found her and I cut her down.
RFK Jr. told the police that his wife had called him the day before taking her life and admitted everything was her fault and that he was right about everything. And seeing as she was no longer alive, well, the public would just have to take his word for it. But the way Mary's death was handled didn't sit well with everyone. For starters, there were allegations made by RFK Jr. during the custody battle that surfaced, claiming she was violent, threatened to harm herself in front of the children, and purposely ran over the family dog.
And I don't want people to view this as an evil woman. She was not an evil woman. She had borderline personality disorder.
This was a much different version of Mary than the one friends and neighbors described.
That was a passive-aggressive statement because he was saying that she would act as if she was a crazy person, but it wasn't because she was a crazy person or evil person. It was because she had a medical disorder that was making her do that. So what he's doing there is he's saying that she actually does fit the profile of someone who would unalive themselves, but he didn't want to do it in a way that seemed aggressive towards her character. So instead, he said that she struggled with the personality disorder, which could, was an excuse for those behaviors, but still fit the whole profile of what ended up happening to her.
Always very personable, always very friendly, always smiled. I didn't know her any other way.
And maybe that's why the internet wasn't buying it. There's another side to the story, obviously. The Kennedys are so powerful and have a long history blaming all the women and the victims in their lives for their shortcomings. Look at all the Kennedy men. Same man, different names. Mary's family also denied these allegations, calling them vindictive lies. The Kennedys, however, had all the power in this situation, which RFK Jr. made crystal clear when he had Mary buried in the Kennedy family plot, despite her family's wishes to have her buried in Westchester, New York, closer to where her 4 children lived. Think that's bad? He then, allegedly without informing her family, had Mary dug up and buried at an empty part of the cemetery, 700 feet away and unmarked. Then there was the autopsy report, which revealed Mary's fingers were jammed between the noose and her neck, hinting at a change of heart, or potentially foul play.
You got to say there, first of all, okay, that would make it seem like she's trying to get out of it, right? Which tells us 2 things. One, that she was not unalived and then hung up, that she was actually hung up while alive. And 2, whether you want to or not, it's human instinct to try to save yourself. If you're drowning, it's human instinct, whether you want to die or not, it's human instinct to try and save yourself. So it'd be the same thing here with the hanging.
After all, as one Reddit user put it, her death sure was convenient for him. Of course, this was all just speculation. But if Jeffrey was in the habit of getting rid of women who complicated the lives of men he knew, many believe Mary wasn't his only victim. This brings us to another email Jeffrey sent Ava Dubin from 2013 that read, "Sultan's mother-in-law died today in Colombia. Whoops." Ava replied, "You mean at Columbia Hospital? That is very, very sad. Did she get a transplant?" While the emails don't name the specific Sultan, there was one Sultan who had already been connected to one of the most chilling messages in the files. In 2009, Jeffrey sent an email to someone whose identity was redacted that read, "Where are you? I loved the torture video."
Yep, we've
Naturally,
seen that.
it was the last 5 words of that message that sparked alarm and outrage. Why had the identity of the person who had sent this video been concealed by the Department of Justice? People like United States Representative Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie couldn't justify it and took it upon themselves to unmask this anonymous individual, along with 5 other wealthy, powerful, redacted men from the files, on the House floor. The mystery person's identity?
Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World.
Scratch that. Following the revelations from the files,
We knew it.
now the former CEO of DP World, a logistics company that's responsible for roughly 10% of the world's container trade. After being unredacted, it became clear just how deep the Sultan's connection to Epstein went, with bin Sulayem showing up over 5,000 times in the files. See, there was a clear overlap in their interests, both in terms of business and pleasure. The files showed that the two discussed girls and X-rated messages. And while there was no evidence that the Sultan participated in Jeffrey's trafficking scheme, the way he spoke about young women felt more like someone discussing his latest purchase than people. For example, in 2013, the Sultan emailed Jeffrey, "By the way, the Ukrainian and the Moldovan arrived. Big disappointment. The Moldovan is not as attractive as the picture, while the Ukrainian is very beautiful." But was there evidence that this was the same Sultan whose mother-in-law's death had received an unsettling whoops from Epstein?
Probably.
Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem's personal life had been kept private.
You also have to wonder, probably nothing, but what are they cooking right there? What type of meat is being stirred up there? Probably nothing. But just knowing the company that we're here talking about, you never can tell.
Making us unable to verify whether he had a mother-in-law who passed away at the time. What we do know is that he and Jeffrey were disturbingly close. All I know for sure is that you are one of my most trusted friends in very sense of the word. Jeffrey wrote the Sultan in 2013. You have never let me down. Not once, not half of once. And I greatly appreciate the time we spend together. The Sultan responded, thanking Jeffrey, before adding, I am off to sample a fresh 100% female Russian at my yacht.
Wow. The way that they speak about women, or should we say girls, is just disgusting. Sample a fresh 100% female Russian at my yacht.
Then there was another file, where it seemed they were hardly speaking in code at all. On June 30th, 2014, someone whose identity has been redacted wrote Jeffrey, I give you permission to kill him. He is apparently with blank. He lied to you and he lied to me. Jeffrey replied, whoops. The unknown sender then wrote, no one will lie to you and get away with it from me. No one. Unlike other files we dug up, where the people
He said whoops is correct. Did you see that? Let me go back there. Right here, no one will lie to you and get away with it. No one. Whoops is correct, which means basically putting out a hit to take care of someone that's lying.
Unlike other files we dug up, where the people Jeffrey was talking to seemed just as confused as we were by his usage of whoops, the unknown sender in this exchange seemed aware that the word stood for much more.
It says right here, you write cryptic emails. What do you mean by whoops? I thought that you would be happy for me. All right, so it looks like some people also recognized in emails that what's being said here is strange.
Adding, whoops is correct. Again, questions arose as to why the identity of the person messaging Jeffrey had been concealed. After all, the wording gave internet users the impression that this was no victim, but a ringleader. And given the authority they led by granting Jeffrey permission to kill, there was speculation that this could be a world leader or someone high up in law enforcement or the justice system. But the internet didn't have to wonder for long. In one of the files, which has since been removed, the identity of the redacted sender wasn't fully censored, leading online sleuths to piece together the name.
So if you look closely at the bottom, it reads out Susan Hamblin.
In this file, the DOJ also failed to redact the name of the person the man Susan was talking about, Olga, which users theorized was Olga Golashko, another member of Jeffrey's staff. Internet users also pointed out that Susan Hamblin's name and email fit into the redacted boxes of a particularly disturbing message written to Jeffrey in 2014 that read, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." Naturally, all of this prompted one question.
Who is Susan Hamblin?
From the Epstein files, it appeared that Susan operated as one of Jeffrey's longtime personal assistants. However, when it came to what this job entailed, that's where things get murky. Back in 2022, Susan Hamblin was identified as a member of Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle in articles published by The Sun. In the tabloid, a victim alleged that Susan had brought her to Jeffrey Epstein to be essayed and warned her not to tell anyone what had happened, or Jeffrey would take the lives of her and her family members.
Wow.
Susan, however, successfully sued The Sun for libel, leading the publication to issue an apology, retract the story, and pay a settlement. People have also recently connected the Susan Hamblin from the files to another Susan Hamblin, who had a job that made a potential connection to Epstein all the more sinister.
She is the founder of an adoption agency.
Stop.
However, this does not appear to be the same Susan Hamblin who worked for Jeffrey. And given how common the name is, we can't say with 100% certainty that the Susan Hamblin who sent these emails is even the former employee. What we do know is that it's only thanks to a fluke by the DOJ that this name was exposed.
Check out that image. We never see this whole image right here. And this is actually an image I often use in the thumbnails of my videos. You don't often see the woman that's next to him right here. And I'm assuming that that's the woman, Susan, that they continuously are talking about.
We were never supposed to see any of this.
We also know the kind of person Jeffrey is and what he's allegedly capable of, code word or no code word. In the files, an FBI intake form from an anonymous source exposed just how far powerful individuals might go to keep their private lives private. The source claimed they were talking to a woman about their time as a limousine driver in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The former claimed that during this time, they drove Donald Trump and overheard a phone conversation that was concerning enough that they were a few seconds from pulling the limousine over on the median and within a few seconds of pulling him out of the car and hurting him due to some of the things he was saying. They claimed that Trump kept repeating the name Jeffrey and referenced mistreating some girl. The source recalled the woman whose identity has been redacted turning stone cold during the conversation. She then allegedly told them that Donald J. Trump had essayed her along with Jeffrey Epstein. When she was advised to go to the police, she claimed, "I can't, they will kill me." But the next day, the woman had the change of heart and decided to contact the police, a choice that might just have proved fatal. See, the woman was later found with her head blown off in Kiefer, Oklahoma.
Wow.
Officers allegedly said there was no way she had taken her own life, yet the coroner stated she had. But even if this story was fabricated, we know another crime Jeffrey is more than capable of, SA. So perhaps it's no surprise that Whoops has also been connected to SA. Yes, from disturbing subject lines to Jeffrey responding whoops after learning someone was essayed at 18, it's hard to ignore the sinister link. And that brings us to an email from 2011 that social media users are describing as repugnant, disgusting, and one of the most evil and heartbreaking things they've ever read, that could only have been written by
the purest form of evil on earth.
Although the identity of the individual Jeffrey was talking about has been censored, his statements about the anonymous female made her sound innocent and potentially criminally young. In the message, Jeffrey wrote that this anonymous person felt God's presence next to her when she was in bed, and that she knows that Jesus watches over her and he helps save her life. What could have been a sweet message was made unsettling by the one-word sentence that followed. Whoops. The redacted recipient of the email responded, "You should dress up as him when you see her," referring to Jeffrey dressing as the girl's savior, Jesus. Jeffrey replied, "Of course, the oh Jesus I'm coming trick." Without outright saying what they were doing, the internet believed these emails provided a horrifying account of just what Jeffrey and his friends were capable of.
They took this little girl's faith and used it as a weapon against her.
And given the use of whoops, the theory was that they did that in the most painful way possible, whether that just involved SA or included uniting the unnamed alleged victim with their savior for good. Naturally, people were sickened.
It makes me nauseous.
And as backlash grew, so did questions. Why was the identity of the person that Jeffrey was emailing being protected? Why weren't people protesting in the streets?
I mean, this is a question we could always ask. Why were the names redacted? And I think it's very clear. I think we all know that redactions are done to protect the people that are committing the crimes. This is what we've been seeing. This is why none of the files that have come out have been done. Nothing has been done with any of them. No one is being charged with anything. And this is why a lot of the really evil, the really bad, the really incriminating files have yet to even come out.
When had society become this numb? It was enough to make some people conclude that the whole system is rotten to its very core and demand justice.
Yeah.
But what does justice look like? Well, for many, it starts with putting the victims first. You know, the ones the Department of Justice had repeatedly failed by exposing their personal information in the Epstein files.
It has my full name, my birthday, my address. Like, how is any of this acceptable?
Along with originally uncensored photos and videos, including this footage of a bikini-clad teenager.
Hello, my name is I'm 15 years old, I'm 1.78 meters long, and I'm from Riga, Latvia.
Meanwhile, the identities of Jeffrey's potential co-conspirators, like the person encouraging Jeffrey to dress up like Jesus, left the reckoning with their privacies intact.
That video that we just saw of that girl giving her dimensions, her height and weight, that's her auditioning, I believe, for Epstein, trying to be a model or do something with him, having no idea of what was actually in store. This was probably a girl that was very excited about an opportunity that she would potentially have in going and meeting Epstein, because he is the one that can make magic happen for want-to-be stars. So it's actually kind of sad to see an audition tape like that, because the girls are so innocent. They have no idea what they're signing up for.
So what is all of this?
At least for now. However, with news recently breaking that Congress is currently seeking testimony from private investigators who the files revealed were hired to remove incriminating evidence from Jeffrey's Palm Beach mansion.
If the private investigators refuse to give up the information voluntarily in the next 2 weeks, it's possible, guys, the committee could seek a subpoena.
It's clear the wheels of justice are still turning. And as the public continues to press people, like United States Representative Thomas Massey, to unredact names.
Publishing images of victims while shielding predators it's just a failure of complete justice.
So did this video actually give us the answer to if Jeffrey Epstein is someone that would make many people unalive? As we stated at the very beginning of the video, I think we already know the answer to that question, but we still have yet to have the actual evidence that it was done. But, whoops, definitely takes on a new meaning to me and probably to many of you after watching this video. Check out the original video in the description below. I've linked it there for you. And check out this video diving deeper into the evil network. And I'll see you guys over there.